And then I should see a flashing dot. Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Sheepdog, Howl, our Zoom call, usually weekly. I'm Bryan Brey, and I'm the guest host for this week. I'm going to be sharing Cybernetic Basins, Big Five, Story Patterns, Enneagram, and I think it's Political Identity. I can't see under that, but something like that. This dovetails off of my work from Myth Matrix, where I guess I figured out, with the help of some genius other dudes, that there is a connection between the 5 tribes. So this would be David Kaplan's work on tribal leadership. And those tribes are life sucks, my life sucks, I'm great, we're great, and life is great. And it's basically a distribution bell curve. And what I found is that that lines right up with the 5 pairs of story patterns. And we're going to go through that here because we made additional connections. Big 5 personality is in it. There's the Enneagram, and I did the initial dive into political identities. And the importance of that is we're seeing kind of the warfare or weaponized political identity. And the intention here is to both strong man their argument or steel man their argument, find out what's the best part of it, and to find out what's missing from there. What is it? Suppositions does it rest on? Yeah, our presuppositions. So we're going to see some interesting connections here. It is a big picture, so we're going to go through it pretty quick. Feel free to ask questions, like I said, and we're going to start right here on the life sucks stage 1. Bill's comment was here. Likely it's a lower underclass sentiment of just trying to stay alive. So I'll read. It's known for the lowest. It produces people who do horrible things. It's people who systematically sever relationships from functional tribes in order to pull together with others who think alike. It's the culture of gangs and prisons, and it's filled with despairing hostility and alienation. And people will do anything to survive, even undermine others. You can underline that undermine others part. So of the big 5 that I see that it connects to is neuroticism. And there's an image here. Notice that you can get there a lot of ways. Basically, you have volatility or withdrawal. We've seen that. Even in my life, it's pretty apropos. It's described, here we have a little neuroticism. It's sensitive or nervous versus secure and confident. So obviously, if we're dealing with somebody online and they're coming across real sensitive or telling you're not being sensitive enough or any of that, you can say, okay, well, or you're being arrogant because maybe we're more secure or confident. It's a tendency to experience unpleasant emotions easily, such as anger, anxiety, depression, and vulnerability. For me, that really adds up. Like if you connect with people and they tend to be tremendously emotional, and they also lean heavily to the negative emotions. You're like, what are we doing here? You know, it's really difficult. So could be high neuroticism at this point. The examples here is I'm easily disturbed. I change my mood a lot. I get irritated easily. I get stressed out easily. I get upset easily. I have frequent mood swings. I often feel blue and I worry about things. So the flip side though is if I'm relaxed most of the time and I seldom feel blue. All right, going on to the story patterns. The 2, as I said, there's 5 pairs. So within stage 1 of life sucks is monster in the house and why done it tales. There's we're going to go through these. Each of the story patterns has 3 fundamental elements to make the equation. And I do want to give credit to Blake Snyder of Save the Cat series. He's the one who formulated these 10 story patterns. He didn't have that they were in pairs. That was my innovation, except for he had Superman and Dude with a Problem. But anyway, so for a monster in the house, you have to have a monster, a house, and a sin. And we'll, right under that, I have the Enneagram. This is an interesting thing. This is definitely deep in my advanced work of Myth Matrix. The Enneagram, based on the number 9, there was originally 9 sins. It's interesting that I think it's fear and lying are the 2 that are dropped out. of, now they call it the 7 deadly sins, but originally there were 9, at least based in this Enneagram. And then I was able to formulate what the virtue side of that would be. And then there is a great work. It's in the Myth Matrix. I forgot the guy's name at this point, but he did something about each of the Enneagrams had a driving fear. And so we just jump into it. The fear of being evil, and resentment and anger being the sin. Sometimes they say the sin of wrath. And then peace and patience, of course. Let's dive into that a little bit, because we know from the Christians, they love to push on the peace and patience, or to turn the other cheek, and we're seeing how that's working. The resentment and anger, we definitely see come up a lot on the left. Protest, doxing, So I think the point, if we wanted to check them, it would be, hey, you're being evil here, or to question, have them at least start to reflect if they're being evil. Are they turning into that which they hate? Just do a couple of these, maybe not all of them, but I did for feminists, the monster is men, the house that they're in is America, and the sin. Now you got to think that the sin could be just in general for all the characters in the movie, and I believe that it's ignorance. They don't typically look at the statistics for the males, higher suicide rate, tougher jobs, earlier death, less disposable income, things like that.
There's so many narcissism.
Yeah.
So many sins.
Yeah. Arrogance would be like the flip side too. So yeah, narcissism or arrogant. Like traditional women, maybe their monster is feminist. Same house, it's America, and they could be coming across arrogant as their sin. And I'm just saying in general, like what would be, if you'd step back and think that all the traditional women were somehow cast into a Monster in the House film, how would those 3 elements typically be painted? Next one, social justice warriors. Rich white men are the monster. It's America. And theirs might be that the sin is just tolerance. They've been tolerating it too long. For LGBT, straight, anything straight, America, arrogance is probably coming across. They tend to be pushing their hand too much. People of color could be against whites, America, ignorance. Anyway, I went down through here. Anti-fascist thinks that it's Nazis in America, but the sin is hypocrisy because they're turning that way. So I just added more and gave it some thought. There are some that are global.
Can I jump in for a sec? When you say hypocrisy and or anti-fascist, can you describe that a bit? I don't quite understand.
Okay, so for anti-fascist, punch a Nazi, bash the fash. What I see is that, and maybe it could be arrogance or ignorance, but what I was particularly seeing as a sin is that what they are doing and the way that they are doing it is very fascist.
And these
I see. So the sin that they're committing is hypocrisy.
Right. Yeah. The sin in Monster House and a sin. And I after I got further into this, and there's quite a lot to cover, I got that it was like these Hayekian triangles, or if you just said that they're like 3 points, so you can start to get a shape of something, instead of maybe 2 points, you get a line or a connection. 3 points starts to give you either vectors or a force. I do think that it's interesting to try to take these equations and then notice of how much it can give us a frame. Say, let's continue on this. We're working with an anti-fascist. He or she is doing the basic talking points. We know that the Nazi is an enemy, so we could potentially steelman the argument and pick out in particular what wasn't good about the Nazis. You could say how it's happening in America, if that's what they're looking for, and it's important. But in terms of the hypocrisy, that's where you can probably open up some dialogue of, well, do you see how what you're doing is is fascistic in the sense that you're not allowing for any other competing opinions. You're not allowing them to just have peaceful separation, or, you know,
that's what a Nazi would say.
So, okay, now there's something I'm grasping at here, because I'm thinking about the hierarchy and triangles that you're talking about, is that it's almost as though the sin that's listed is occurring because of lack of weight and measures.
Okay.
So let me see if I can unpack that. So a fascist is, I'm doing all these expressions thinking that I'm going to get pauses out of you all, but I've got my screen turned off. So Nazis sees fascism, the house that they're in is America, but their behavior is hypocrisy. The hypocrisy resulting from a lack of weight and measure against what they're viewing as the monster. No, there's something there. I'm gonna just shut off my mic and think about that for a second.
Well, so for example, often in at least classic horror films, the sin was typically carnal. It was money or greed and sex. So, you know, teenagers having underage sex was something that was a sin. And so there's this avenging being that comes in to clean house. When they got to kind of later iterations, there's a subtype called nihilist monster. And this was an interesting one because it said the monster really didn't have there wasn't a real reason that they were killing. There wasn't particularly a sin on the main character's side. And the more that was explained and researched on it was, well, you could still also have the sin of ignorance. So that's why you see ignorance and arrogance show up quite a bit.
So, I mean, all of that implies reciprocity. That if there's a sin that creates the monster, pertains to reciprocity. If it's nihilistic and not attached to a specific action, then the reciprocity is ignorance.
Yeah, that's good. It was interesting because a lot of the earlier horror films usually had a sin. You could point your finger and go, "Yep, it's those damn teenagers. They get what they deserve," kind of thing. There's a part of that, but when they got into the 70s and 80s, they started to develop more horror films where you couldn't really determine that there was a sin there, and then that started to get a little more edgy for people because, well, what's the sin? And then it came down to.
Are you talking? Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, Bill, are you talking when you say like weight and measure? Are you talking about proportionality? So they're responding to a monster that actually exists, but as I see it, they're sort of exaggerating and over focusing on it because all of these are iterations on a victim complex. So they're turning it into an excuse rather than trying to solve.
Yeah, and I think that the one flaw that I have is that I need to always be mentioning proportionality with reciprocity, and I almost never do. It just seems like in terms of that Hayekian triangle, in the lower end of that triangle, there might be something justified there, but at some point, you become the monster that you're fighting,
right?
And that seems to be a lack of calculation. You could call that ignorance,
or full accounting.
Full account, whatever that be. Let's just call it ambiguation. That the weight and measure in which you're making that assessment, that you feel you're acting morally, but eventually you're tipping into the immoral, is a lack of a disambiguated measure.
I really like that, right? Because I think the spectrum we're going to be seeing here is going from ambiguated to disambiguated. Now, the other thing that I just wanted to bring up quickly is when you were saying about the earlier versions of horror movies, if there's a sin attached to the monster, that almost sounds like a comeuppance narrative, where the person's getting their comeuppance for their sin. And then when you remove that,
you remove the sort of the protagonist's agency around creating that terror.
Yeah.
That's what would bring the edginess into it. It's like, holy cow, you had no say in this whatsoever. It's just completely random.
Right.
So I'm wondering if maybe there's loops, like another cybernetic basin here from comeuppance back into this in terms of those earlier horror movies.
You guys go ahead. I'm going to close a page that must be making a bunch of noise.
That might be mine. Let's see if.
So what's the loop that on one end you have sort of like a justified comeuppance that the monster has, or the monster receives, and this is somehow taking agency out of the protagonist?
So I was thinking in terms of superhero myths. Essentially, they're myths. Has this connection where the I'm just getting my screens organized here, where either the superhero creates his nemesis or the nemesis creates the superhero. So there ends up being this coupling between arch enemies.
Yeah.
So when you had mentioned this notion of the original horror movies being attached to a sin, it's almost though the prey of the predator has created the predator. The sin has created the monster. The sinner has created the monster. And really, then the whole theme is that the sinner is getting their comeuppance for their original sin, and they can either fall to the monster, or they can redeem themselves from the sin. Well, if you remove that, you decouple that, the monster then just becomes this arbitrary random threat. That would ramp up the threat. It's like, holy shit, this came out of nowhere. There was nothing I could have done about this, which would ramp up that thrill, right? So that's why I was saying that the sinner being confronted by the monster in the house is almost a comeuppance story, that the sinner is getting their comeuppance for their sin.
Yeah.
For their ambiguation.
Yeah.
We'll unpack
it. Kind of reminds me of
Well, unpack that a little bit more in the sense that in these early versions, usually it was a group of teenagers. The lead protagonist was the one who didn't engage in sex and then was spared. So there was kind of a lot of moral teachings through it, or the one who wasn't greedy or controlled by money tended to survive the onslaught. I like where you're going with it, that they feed off each other in that sense. I think what tends to happen in these horror is that, but it takes on a whole group. So in the superhero, it's definitely, you have the hero, it is, and we'll get to it, superpower, it has a nemesis, and there's a curse. So in those they all feed off of each other. And I do like that. I think that it'd be, to get that meta level shared with some of these political identities folks, to have them see that they're in a loop of their own making, kind of victim narratives, as we said, and have them step back from that, or ask them, well, what would it take for you to win, or to destroy this monster, or what does it look like to defeat the monster? I mean, I think there might be engaging ways to, instead of making it such a point by point or attack, especially since they likely won't do point by point. If you make it about a story, it's separate it from themselves. Maybe one, they'll take it less personal, and two, maybe you'll be able to get some subconscious stuff to break through. So you guys want to go on to the next one, or Alain, did you have anything to add on that?
What I was going to add actually sort of ties into the next one, because I'm being a little cynical, but at this level, how many of these people want an answer? It's more like if you challenge their belief, even gently and even with facts, you're just going to strengthen that belief. They are a victim complex that wants an excuse. They don't want an answer.
Well, I want to jump in there, because so there's two things at play. Like for some that autists that look at this, they might be going, well, where's the evidence behind all of this theory?
Mm-hmm.
And then to your point around the victim narrative, is that what's behind this is the neurology of narratives, is that the heuristics of the human brain is almost, there's a spectrum to it, is almost always grounded in narrative type thinking. Is we simplify and deal with the world, or essentially compress information into a narrative that is then revealed. We would then express back the extended phenotype. We then express back through these narratives that we engage with. So along when you're talking about that they're engaging with one victim with like a victim narrative, that's revealing of the extended phenotype that they're a part of. So there's more grounding in here, that when we study narratives and see the patterns, we could actually break out an operational explanation for this, like the Big Five, like the endocrine system, and so on. Yeah. So they're operating from a different constellation of stressors that drive their behavior. And in understanding that, it's no longer about, well, that constellation's bad and this constellation's good. It's about understanding the constellation they're coming from, perhaps steel-manning it, and then changing the story.
Yeah.
When you change the story, that's where the valuation shifts.
It's maybe giving us a map that would let us answer what kind of structure would these people need to step into a more productive role.
Right. So like if we go back to the stuff that we did with Andy Curzon, when he's saying when you speak into their frame, it gives you the opportunity to change the frame. Where if you're speaking across frames, all you get is more division and conflict.
Right.
So in this case, any frame, because really when we're talking about more sophisticated logical versions of frames, we're talking about specifically that, just more complicated more sophisticated versions of narratives. It's just a scientific narrative versus maybe an intuitive narrative or a religious narrative. So if we can understand the narrative that they're operating from, that becomes a storyline that their identity is deeply embedded within. So when you confront the frame, you're confronting their identity, their survival instinct. That's why there's so much resistance.
Right.
If you speak within the narrative, now you can start expanding the storyline, which it seems like this progression through all of these, through the 5 tribes and so on, is really about it's an expansion of those narratives to accommodate more information. Well, what is that? That's the disambiguation of intuition, of the heuristic. So anyways, I'll shut up now.
I got a helicopter, but what I was going to add to it is it's exactly where I was in a myth matrix is to understand story patterns, so that if you meet somebody at a party and they start telling you a rites of passage or telling you a funny story from an adolescent passage, you can kind of remember what that was like and you can relate to them. And then maybe you have in your repertoire of some stories, and I mean, you'd probably do it more naturally. I guess this is somewhat contrived, but as you were saying, the scientific side to it. So notice on this first stage that it is about neuroticism. So the way that I would try to connect with any one of these political identity folks is that I would get a little bit personal, maybe without, if I felt enough comfort and confidence that the conversation was productive, that I would go, where do I feel the most neurotic? And I would start to speak to what's my monster, what's my house, and what's my sin. And maybe just from going there, I can now match where they're coming at. And as you said, we could open the frame up. Now it includes maybe both of our perspectives, and then maybe the presuppositions, we could address those a little bit more, go into how it's, it's looping, how it's feeding itself. How do we get out of that? How do we break free from it? How do we get a broader perspective? And if they're not willing to move, out of volatility or withdrawal and just have neuroticism, they don't want to go to relaxed or any of that, well, at least he gave it a good shot. So, okay.
I.e. skull piles.
What was that?
I said, therefore, piles of skulls.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, obviously conflict's inevitable sometimes, but like you were mentioning, these are just like constellations of human personality. So you can't just say, we're going to take this type, we're going to make skull piles out of them and the problem's solved. It's like, it's still going to reemerge. So you need to have some understanding of what structure would let that constellation express in a productive way.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And this is the one thing that I really want to start focusing on more is that P and Sheepdog can accommodate the entire spectrum. Right. So it's really not about like planting a flag somewhere along that spectrum, whether it's political or personality or epistemology. We can accommodate the entire spectrum, and then from there, that gives us weight and measures on understanding what is a positive expression versus a destructive expression. And skull piles result from destructive expressions.
Yeah.
Right. So violence isn't off the table.
So now moving over to the story pattern of Whodunit Tales, it has three components: a detective, a secret, and a dark turn. What's interesting about Whodunit Tales is that the protagonist, the detective, doesn't necessarily need to be in the life sucks. They often are. There's a lot of noir style where you have a drunk detective and all of that they're kind of living in this same world as the criminals, but they don't have to. There's examples of pretty powerful, meaning that often a protagonist will change over the arc of the film and they'll be a totally different guy or gal by the end. There is an interesting highlight in Detective Tales that they don't necessarily have to change, and they're a good exception. Of the Enneagram, I found here that number 2 is a fear of being unloved. So if you're in a conversation with somebody, they bring up a dark event that's happened to them, could be something that was unresolved in their life, then find out if this being unloved part, this does show up with a lot of the detectives. They're unloved or have unsatisfying relationship, or they meet a femme fatale character, any of that. So we see it in a lot of these. So respect and humility, obviously, we're going to try to hold that ground. But on their side, if there's the sin of pride, and there's flattery and pride on their side, that they typically engage in that. I'm just going to try to do more random. How about we'll do immigrants and dreamers. The detective would be academics, and you might want to put that in quotes or brackets. The secret for them is that there is an agenda on it, obviously driven for political reasons, largely Democrats, to take power. And the dark turn would be white flight. I should explain dark turn a little bit better. That's when the detective determines that with the information they have, they don't typically have a breakthrough until the detective themselves takes on a sin of some sort. They make a deal with the enemy. What was it in Fargo? I think she almost slept with some guy to get information, and she was like happily married. So usually there's a something where now the detective's hands aren't super clean. He's just not pure in this anymore. So when you bring this out to arguing with somebody, the important point is try to get them to reveal their hand, to reveal where their dark turn is. And like we'll try white males. White males would have white male detectives. It's less than academics at this point. There's also the secret is the agenda. The dark turn could be violence. And obviously, there's a media that is thirsting for any white male violence anywhere in this world. So that's pretty clear on that. See if I can grab another one.
Is this under My Life Sucks? Am I in the right column here?
No, you got to go one.
If you look at that.
Yeah, we're doing the second pair of the first column. Yes, I also
Column
want to get
D.
out of life sucks. Yeah, why done it?
Oh, I see it.
Yeah, column D. Yeah, I'm sorry, I keep
No,
interrupting.
you can.
Is there a carryover between R and K and pack versus herds? Because it seems like what I've saw from the Enneagrams, that the sentiment is similar to herd mentality. And then just to throw it in there, we watched Murder on the Orient Express last night, and
Okay.
that was a dark turn tale.
Yeah.
Where at the end of the day, the Perot had to take the dark turn, had to commit a sin. Yeah. So yeah, I was wondering if are we looking at a transition from herd to pack across the spectrum here?
Well, the largest is currently the middle, the I am great. So anything that we're looking at this would likely be in that 4% of the distribution and population. So they could still be powerful, meaning the 4% of people who do evil in this world make a pretty damn big impact, right? Just like the 4% who do good make a good impact, you know? So we really have to police, like every man a judge, every man a sheriff has to police in this area. And this is, it ties into check-ins, you know, see if something's about to take a dark turn in somebody's life, or if they discover a secret, gosh, that's got to be tough, you know. They find something that's happening either in their community or in a relationship. Could be, you know, it's just a point of see that people can shift into life sucks or my life sucks, and they can be there for a time or for not forever, but that's why overall I do want us to get the whole spectra and be able to relate and connect and communicate with somebody at any level, and while we're progressing with our beautiful burdens forward, you know, we should be going from the I am great to the we're great to the life is great. It's going to be pretty incredible when we talk a little bit more of how we can actually move people up in their storylines.
And just a side note that when you're in a pack, you're never abandoned.
I can see that.
When you're in a pack, you never leave somebody behind.
Yeah.
You drag them up with you. Right? Okay, so.
Great.
I do see not flock. I do see herd on the left side of this, and then also maybe predatory on the left, and then as you go right, you're getting into higher forms of cooperation.
Well, let's circle back to that when we get a little further on. How about nationalists on here? The detectives, I guess, would be other nationalists. The secret, I think the secret, they're going to figure out that it's not viable, you know. And that the dark turn is the culture war. I put culture war in the sense that either they'll perpetuate it or they're going to participate in it. So anyway, just to go over that is to once again look at the three maybe elements, ingredients, forces. Could be an interesting way to see the vectors. Last thing on the comment, bringing this all back, I think if we were communicating with somebody and it felt the conversation was showing up highly neurotic, had a lot of emotions into it, I would likely go to this monster in the house or a why done it, and I think that it could be pretty interesting conversation. Okay, are we ready for two? Go ahead.
So are you saying that really, if we hit somebody that's at a story pattern that's like wish spell lesson, we should move a column to the right?
We try to.
That's really how we expand these.
Yeah, meet them there and then try to move to the right. Yeah. And I would offer that it's probably, you also have A stories and B stories. I'm not trying to complicate things, but that could be a good way. If their A story is a why done it, maybe you could get a buddy love tale in there and find out that, you know, a good friend of theirs was always supportive or something. I mean, there's ways to do it. Okay, my life sucks is the second distribution. We're saying here it could be the lower middle class, working class sentiment could be in here. There's a really interesting separation because on stage 1 is separated, there's alienated, right? No, it's alienated versus separated. Stage 2 is not alienated like stage 1, but certainly separated. People behave as apathetic victims or passively antagonistic and cynical. They usually have very few friends and are depressed about their work and life. They're often resigned or quietly sarcastic and passionless. So I think we've all been there at stages in our life. Notice that the big 5 that I'm showing here would be openness. And it's described open to experience, that you're inventive and curious, or you're consistent but cautious. Appreciation of art, emotion, adventure, unusual ideas, curiosity, variety of experience. Here's examples. I have a rich vocabulary. I have a vivid imagination. I have excellent ideas. I'm quick to understand things. I use difficult words. I spend time reflecting on things. I'm full of ideas. Or I'm not interested in abstractions. I have difficulty understanding abstract ideas, and I do not have a good imagination. So that would be low openness. So somebody shows up in a party that way, you're going to see maybe they're high openness or maybe they're really low openness. And then I would look at these story patterns, see what kind of shows up here for them. First one here I have would be an out of the bottle tale. These are really fun. I like a lot of them. There's a wish, a spell, and a lesson in them is the 3 key components. Of the Enneagram.
I lost that sentence. I don't know if it came through for Bill, but that last sentence you did was all jumbled.
No, I didn't. That's why I shut off my video.
Oh, okay. The 3 ingredients for a out of the bottle tale are a wish, a spell, and a lesson. And I'd just take a moment, think if you've seen any out of the bottle tales. I do have some examples in there. There's a whole bunch of movie posters if you want to scan through those. I don't want to get too sidetracked. I want to stay on. So on the Enneagram side, the sin that I found, and this was the one, like I said, of the original 9 sins, this is one that was dropped off, and it's the sin of deceit or lying. It has vanity there, but it's really the deceit part of it. The virtue would be acceptance and honesty, truthfulness. We're pushing. And this fear is huge here. Almost every single movie, this fear of being worthless is what an out of the bottle tale covers. You have some character that for whatever point they are in their life, they feel worthless. And some spell, some wish creates this whole alternate upside down them that they get to experience. There's also a thing as a curse bottle where they get cursed and they also experience the upside down version of themselves. So those are out of the bottle tales. To dive around here a bit. Oh, here's a good one. Like for white males, the wish would be for law and order. The spell would be a version of winning right. And the lesson in here is courage. So not every one of these storylines that I'm putting the 3 has to be a negative. In fact, if I was going to really go into detail on this, I would create probably a negative version of any one of these political identities, like the worst version, kind of like a stoic split. I'd create what would be the worst case scenario for them and what would be the best case scenario. That's something that I'd probably do. Is there a question?
One of the things I was going to say that Bill brought up in regards to narratives and, the under or lower or working class is you can see distinctions. Like if you look at rap music, a lot of times it idolizes criminality, stupid violence, drugs. But then if you look at metal music or country music, it idolizes the tragic hero. So it's sort of like you might be doomed to fail, but you're still going to try and do the right thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. I have to tell you that in the last 5 weeks on the job site, we've had nothing but crews cycle through the job site we're on. It's a massive job site. And I've been playing my Lincoln lists. Lincoln Thurman sent me those Dark Country playlists.
Yeah.
And there is not one guy that hasn't come up to me that said, I really love your music. And every one of them started off playing rap on the job site.
Wow.
So they're thirsting for that tragic hero sentiment because that's who they are.
That's great.
Side note.
Excellent.
Yeah. Here's a good one. The anti-Zionist and National Socialists, we have their wish would be to end Israel. The spell would be Palestine returns. And then I said maybe the lesson could be Arab problems, so maybe you trade one for another. I mean, Palestine did have 400 years of peace prior to Israel, and I think they had like a 10% Jewish population prior to the mass immigration there. But anyway, let's see if there's one that's kind of more interesting. Oh, for like conspiracy theorists, the wish is for a big awakening. The spell, I think, is that nothing would change, and that I think the lesson inside of that is to focus on immediate problems.
So use operational language based in accruing agency.
Yeah,
there you go. Yeah, exactly.
Can I add to that there seems to be like a maturity of that progression. I think the Great Awakening is coming to one's own group interest. How do I say this? Coming to one's own interest, group interest, that was only intuited before. It's like the world was presented to you by one form of intuitions.
Right.
Government is taking care of our interests and so on. And then you've discovered that it doesn't operate that way. And then by engaging in the conspiracy theory, you're like, those bastards. And really all you're clarifying is that you have interests different than those that are ruling you. And it's coming to clarify or disambiguate your own group interests. You just had it there. It actually is a great awakening.
Yeah. I was just going to add that you could have the "we are great" on the right is actually pulling that, pulling the leading distribution is going to be pulling people forward. So what they were maybe intuiting and being able to break away from life sucks, that they're there. And so anyway, yeah, we'll get so to continue on the second cybernetic basin and the tribe of My Life Sucks, we'll do the story pattern of rites of passage. And I think more often than not, if I get into a conversation with somebody, I tend to get into a rites of passage tale. They tend to be pretty heartwarming. And as I said before, in each one of these story patterns, there's 5 subtypes. So like in rites of passage, there's an adolescent passage, addiction passage, divorce passage, death passage. And was that 5? Anyway, it has 3 operating elements as well, that there's a life problem. You go about it the wrong way at first, and then finally there's acceptance. So that does lead right exactly what you're saying, Bill. They were going about something the wrong way, and there's an acceptance. So let's see where our feminists are at. They lack power. The wrong way to go about it would be to use orgasm, rally, ridicule, gossip, shame, moralize. That'd be the wrong way to go about it. Notice here the Enneagram. It's almost perfect. The fear of being insignificant. If you want to tone down a feminist, tell them they're significant. Tell them, hey, you're making a big impact in this world. Can we make sure that we go to the some place that's compatible for both of us? Maybe it is separation. Maybe that's just the easiest way. Notice that the joy and kindness, man, there's some points we're going to get to in the 5th stage that's just going to be, you'll see how obviously we have to have limits to our joy and kindness, but to be able to approach people in this stage where they have melancholy and envy is their dominant sin or way of being, and we're trying to meet them with joy and kindness. And what I'm thinking is that, well, then think of a place that when you were melancholy and had envy for others, what was your stories like at that point? Here's a good one. Traditional women, the life problem of herd pressure, I think, is pretty strong. The wrong way could be to join the herd, at least I think for traditional women, of joining the herd, which obviously if it's driven by mainstream media, that's not going to work out real well for them, and probably going to result in this acceptance of this new immoral normal, where I would like to see that some of our efforts begin to empower traditional women. Because if they're looking for a herd and they're losing it, they need to start to assemble better herds, I guess, or the packs of men need to help the women get better herds. Here's an interesting social justice warrior, the life problem. They could argue that it was inequality. The wrong way to go about it is to force equal outcomes. But the acceptance would be to finally get that we were equal before law. So that would really shift this melancholy and envy if we can have them dismantle the presuppositions of that we have to have equality of outcome. And we were talking about reciprocity, proportionality. I mean, I think a lot of these things are going to there's just a way that they're going to frame better and argue or be more clarifying in this.
Yeah, I've been working on this one lately for the Wexit thing, is that equality presumes reciprocity and assumes proportionality.
Yeah.
Equality is the sentiment of equality outside of isonomy is that it's the conflation of reciprocity and proportionality.
Right.
That the presupposition is that if everybody's equal, there'll be reciprocity. Nobody will be exploited or oppressed.
Right.
And the assumed outcome is that there'll be proportionality. And if we can decouple those two things into reciprocity and proportionality, it creates a market demand for weights and measures, which is property. So this is exactly what I'm working on right now.
Well, and get this, if we can help them anchor their fear of being insignificant they will be insignificant if they anchor their identity to a losing life problem or a wrong way of approaching it, right? But that their significance can be dramatically improved if they go about it the right way.
And I think that property in total can solve this basin, because I think the people that are clamoring onto equality are looking at areas of significance that are not valued within a society that weighs economy before society. They're looking for if we have a society that is based on economic measures only,
mm-hmm.
and your value is on social equity or social value, mm-hmm. you're left feeling disenfranchised or insignificant.
Right.
Property in total solves this problem, but it also solves the problem of conflating reciprocity and proportionality. So this is the exact strategy that I'm looking at for Wexit and the People's Party, is to say, this is really what you're intuiting, and this is what you need to clarify, and then get out of these conversations around economics or equality. Talk about reciprocity, talk about proportionality. That forces the conversation on property, which then introduces property in toto, which then throws the net over the whole gambit of incentives.
Great. All right. Is there any questions on rites of passage, the big five of openness, the My Life Sucks, Cybernetic Basin? Any question here? Anybody want to look specifically at a identity politic.
Well, what I was going to add on is that a lot of that stuff is weaponized compassion. So along with what you're saying, they're looking for human flourishing and they're grasping in the direction of equality, but that's not the type of, they're not getting the right type of equality that they would actually need for that outcome of human flourishing.
Fuck, this is why I love this man. He really, like, you just finished, but you just completed the thought I've been grasping with for 2 weeks.
Thanks.
Yeah, pretty awesome. Okay, man, let's go to finally break out of the sucks part. Let's go to the I'm great tribe. Bill added managerial upper middle class here. Known for a tribe of lone warriors. It's about personal domination, find a way and compete and win. I have to win. Winning is personal. Knowledge is power and I'll hoard it. And many people park and stay at the stage. This stage is definitely in the...
You got garbled again.
Oh, sorry. I said this stage is definitely in the middle. I'll turn off the internet on my phone if it's just trying to steal my stream. This is the bell of the bell, right? This is the middle, like 64%. I'd argue this is why there are so many superhero tales that are popular, that the bulk of our population is in this distribution. For the big five, conscientiousness. So notice how that splits into industrialness and orderliness here. Conscientiousness described as efficient and organized on one side versus easygoing and careless. It's a tendency to show self-discipline, act dutifully, and aim for achievement, planned rather than spontaneous behavior. The examples would be, I'm always prepared, I pay attention to details, I get chores done right away, I like order, I follow a schedule, I'm exacting in my work, or I leave my belongings around, I make a mess of things, I often forget to put things back in their proper place, I shirk my duties. You meet somebody or you have an argument, you might see where they are on this conscientious scale. I can make a comment, especially on the superhero. It's right here, though, on this Enneagram. You have security and charity on one side. Obviously, the hero is going to embody this, whereas the nemesis is all about detachment and avarice. Avarice is like greed and power combined. But look at this fear of being incompetent. In every superhero film, you will have the bumbling first early stages of a superhero. It has an element where it's an extraordinary being in an ordinary world. And for that superhero, they want to make them clumsy. And that's usually in the B story or the upside down world of Act 2. And it's a funny stage. Everybody loves it. You love to see the superhero that has all these powers just be a total incompetent, bumbling fool. It's one of the ways that, they get a lot out of that. The audience loves it. Now, if you're dealing with somebody that's really wound up about being competent or incompetent, they might have a big driver around showing up very competent in their life. And that's where you're going to get the I'm great part could show up. And maybe they're highly conscientious, but they might get stuck in that too. So jump down. How about LGBT? I didn't even say, on the 3 elements, there's a special power, a nemesis, and a curse. I know we mentioned a little earlier, these tend to feed off of each other. So I think the special power of the LGBT is propaganda, either propaganda or media. I mean, just look at what they've been able to do with big companies. Have been doing pride flags, and they're just dominating in their special power right now. The nemesis, though, is going to be truth, and I think anytime I see it's scary if it's like 2% make up 40% of the pedophiles. More than half have been molested as children. Some large percentage have STDs. We can kind of go on, but the point being is that they really need to police their own. They need to get that stuff cleaned up. And that's where I have that the curse is this degree of incompetence. It could be that, well, I get the incompetent from the fear of being incompetent. They're actually showing up incompetent. And this whole column becomes pretty easy because the curse that's showing up with a lot of them, including us, is a degree of, well, I have tolerance here, but a degree of being incompetent.
Can I just add that the curse might actually be mutational load,
Wow.
and if you factor in mutational load,
Yeah.
and European genius strategy, so I'm drawing off Dutton here. The best allies they have is Western civilization, because we're the only group strategy that values mutational load, but mutational load within limits. And they're arguing for a blowing away of those limits.
Yeah.
Which is what's causing the civilizational decay.
That's awesome.
They're actually attacking their best ally.
We need to add a row here then for Western civilization. So you could take that one on, Bill. That's a really good insight. Yes, a curse of mutational load. I just started with the big broad strokes. That's awesome. That is a hardcore, either a curse or the nemesis of mutational load.
I would say alienation might also be one too, because some of them might just have a genetic predisposition or a mutational load manifesting that way. But also when something like this is sold to society as cool, and then we have the tribes themselves are alienated and the familial structure is broken down. They're going and looking for acceptance from state sanctioned propaganda.
Right. Okay. Anything else on the superhero I am great? Okay, the next one is kind of the flip, the counterpart or the pair of it is dude with a problem. So this is a ordinary dude.
Can I just ask, we're in the middle of the bell curve?
We're in the middle of the bell curve. We're in the middle of the middle. Yeah. So the dude with a problem is the flip, the pair of it. It's an ordinary being in an extraordinary world or an extraordinary situation. So it demands for big heroics from pretty ordinary beings. Of the three here, we have an innocent hero, a sudden event, and then a life or death battle. Of the Enneagram, hope and faith, that's probably about the best you can offer for people that are in this story pattern in their life. They could be coming at you with a bunch of doubt and fear, or it could be the reverse. You can have a lot of doubt and fear. This is a big one, man. This is totally coming up, this fear of being unsupported. My ex-girlfriend is actually in a 6-year right now, so it's pretty right on. There's a big connection that I've made between Myth Matrix, Enneagram, and where you were in your life. So if you're 14, a 1 and a 4 together is a 5, would put you in a superhero tale. You could check, hey, when I was 14, did I have a superhero tale go on? When I was 15, did I have a dude with a problem kind of tale? And this could be pseudoscience, whatever. I'm only offering it as a tool to make sense of your life. And I've found a bunch of connections to interesting chapters in my life. When I was like 27, what I went through, when I was 33, what I went through, and it was pretty spot on. And if it wasn't spot on, it was a good way to kind of frame and make that year in my life interesting and entertaining and meaningful. And that's what the power of it is.
Can I just add in here that when we're venturing into fear of being incompetent and then unsupported and then deprived, we're venturing into a value set that's pack oriented now, where your value in the pack is competence. You're the product of being in the pack or knowing your role or supporting your role is being supported, is being fed. Right. So I think it was the last major column, the last narrative line under, was it feminist or LGBT? The sin, I think, implied a transition point from her to pack. Can we go back?
Sure. Fear of being insignificant.
Insignificant.
Yeah.
So see how insignificance. So
Basically,
in
you're
a
out of the
herd, so this is a change in sentiment from being good for camouflage,
Yeah,
which is not really a personal value,
right.
into being an individual that's significant towards being competent.
Yeah,
So the desire to be significant then leads into the problem of competence. You're not significant until you're competent.
yeah,
And
totally.
that is a transition from herd to pack.
Well, and then carrying that on, I have a degree of competence in my realm, but am I being supported by other people? Or now do I have to stretch my competence and now doing, 20 different things around the house? Or in life?
Or in terms of or in terms of reciprocity, is my support matched to my competence, or do I have sour grapes saying I deserve more than what I'm providing? So now we're entering into the realm of personal calculation of reciprocity.
There you go. All right. I found a bunch of these. Innocent hero could be any one of these innocent people. The sudden event could be a radicalization event. And then it turns into a life or death battle, which really comes down to, are they willing to kill or defend themselves? Or, as I think you're adding here, Bill, are they willing to defend the pack? So let's see.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you willing to are you willing to find and then fulfill your role, no matter how high or low that is on the hierarchy?
Here's a fun exception: the libertarian anarchist. They're let's say you do find an innocent one, then anarchy breaks out. Well, the life or death battle would be to prove you can live autonomously. Oh, here's right under that, the neo-reactionary: an innocent autist, societal collapse, and then the life or death battle, anarchy to manoralism. Can they pull that off? All right. Okay, any questions? You see how this is conscientiousness. I like how that also connects to the pack. Am I being conscientious to my pack here? And if we scroll back up, just demonstrating my competence, demonstrating my support of others, maintaining a high degree of security and charity and hope and faith. And yeah, so a lot of power here. You can see how people can hang out in this. And if you're saying that this is the tipping point to pack, it would make sense that within these kind of story patterns, if we did want to put some media out there, it'd be a superhero tale that would encourage this shift. It would encourage people to form packs, right?
Right, and if you look at that from fear of being incompetent to fear of being supported, if this is really the middle of the bell curve, the disambiguation at this point is to discover your competency in exchange for support within your group, right?
Right.
And so this is something that, like, I love being with tradesmen right now, because this is exactly what it distills down to. You get support from everybody if you're functioning within your competence and you acknowledge your incompetence.
Right.
Right. If you're stepping outside of your incompetence and say, whoa, guys, I'm not sure, is this how you would do it? And everybody will rush in to help you. But if you pretend like you know and you fuck it up, nobody will support you. I watched this young guy, 19 years old, fucking doing everything right. And he's just a remarkable young guy.
Yeah.
Assumed he could do something he couldn't do and get berated by guys twice his age for no less than 45 minutes. And there was no help. It wasn't like, this is what you did wrong, or this is how you don't do that. There was no education. It was just like, you're a fucking idiot and you shouldn't have done this, right? There was no support. They removed the support as soon as the competence wasn't there.
So does this, okay, so that's great for males and packs. I wonder how would that show up for a group of women?
I couldn't tell you.
I'm guessing that they would have fake support. Like they would start to, they would draw away. what I've seen in some interactions is that they wouldn't necessarily tell them that they were upset at them, but they would withdraw support quietly, maybe start to gossip behind their back, see if they can create a bit of a majority, and then maybe eventually tell them, hey, you're out. You're not in our herd.
So forcing insignificance.
Yep.
Which is our next step, our next row to the
Well,
left.
you probably say you are incompetent and then push the issue. You're out of the herd. Now you're insignificant.
Right.
Well, good stuff. All right. Let's go up one. The tribe of we're great and you're not is kind of implied there. Known for, it said stage 4 is about stable partnerships and tribal pride. People are fully themselves, genuine, inspired, and happy. The culture emphasizes shared core values and interdependent strategies. The tribe always has an adversary, and the bigger the foe, the more powerful the tribe. It's almost verbatim of what Blake Snyder says in A Golden Fleece, is that the bigger the foe, the better the heroics. So if you're like in a sports fleece here, you want to totally have your protagonist team be the underdog, and then you're going to have the bigger heroics out of it. Of the big 5, this is where we get extroversion. It's outgoing and energetic versus solitary and reserved. About energy, positive emotions, urgency, tendency to seek stimulation in the company of others. I mean, you can totally see this with Golden Fleece and with Buddy Love Tales. Extroversion is the main driver in it. I'm the life of the party. I don't mind being the center of attention. I feel comfortable around people. I start conversations. I talk to a lot of different people at parties. Or I don't talk a lot. I keep in the background. I have little to say. I don't like to draw attention to myself, and I'm quiet around strangers. So in the story pattern here, we have first is a golden fleece. The 3 elements are a road, a team, and a prize. Of the Enneagram, I have for a number 7 is a fear of being deprived. So that does tie into this sin of gluttony. So you tend to have epicures. I think the 7 is called an epicure. And I think my Enneagram is a 7. The virtue side would be to have presence and have temperance. Let's scroll down and see if any of these look interesting. Anti-Zionist, National Socialist, again, the road would be like along the, boycott, divest, and sanction. They would look for a team, would be a bunch of their allies. The prize that they're looking is to end Zionism. Conspiracy theorists, the road is on a road to truth. You're looking for allies here. And Epstein didn't kill himself.
That's awesome.
Anti-fascists, they're on a road for freedom. I think they want freedoms and liberties. They're looking for their allies. To some degree, they want autonomy, but I don't think that's the prize that they're going to get. I think they're going to get communism. White males on the road to civil war at this point. The team would be the allies. The prize we're looking for is law and order. Some of them can be easier than others. LGBT, they're on the road for acceptance. Again, they have their allies. The prize, really, though, that they're looking for is power.
I'm wondering if under the team heading, if this is really a Hayekian triangle again against the status quo.
Well, not necessarily, because look for white males. If you would argue that we are the status quo, then you'd say that our team would, but it's not. I don't know.
Be advocates for traditionalism. That's where traditionalism would come in.
I do have a traditional woman.
Oh, you do?
Okay. The road, Western civilization, the team, favorite allies. I wrote there, prize, reciprocity.
I lost you for a second.
I was just saying the prize would be reciprocity for traditional women. It's just what I wrote in there. I mean, what I was going through in a story pattern of what they could be looking for. Bill, what you're saying, proportionality, reciprocity, being able to make equal measures. I mean, that goes into like trad women using measuring cups and and getting to the heart of it. Maybe I think what's interesting here is you can take these political identities and you can then start to form really quick mini stories or commercials or any sort of media that could get out to them. Like, notice that this is about team building, right? So if it is in here, it's a road team and a prize. Man, if we can connect more traditional women together, they're looking for their allies right now. These would be the political identities potentially to support. And I do think that they're hanging out. They're already hanging out in the We're Great. You know, they're largely here anyway. Just anyway, we'll get to it.
Yeah, and I think we could flesh out allies under each of these based on incentives, like whether it's social justice warriors, LGBT, people of color. The allies are all minorities plus white progressives.
Right.
Where if you look at the right and the traditional right, conservative right, the further right you go, then we're talking about like status quo, which is essentially European identity. So we could actually flesh that out a little bit more.
Yeah, notice I don't have identity as just conservative, but it could be like losing right, winning right, you know, conservatives, could be Democrat. But I already had like a couple hundred of these things to type out.
Yeah.
So I just went through them relatively quick.
When you under incomplete hero, where you have counterpart, you're about to explain that, so I'll just shut up.
No. So the second of We're Great is the Buddy Love Tales. You could scroll down here to see a bunch of movie posters. There's like pet love. Here's a classic buddy love, which would be like, they also say professional love. Here's rom-com is there. This is epic love. And here's one that's really opened up a bunch of floodgates. This is forbidden love. You could have like Lolita. Harold and Maude was kind of funny. Probably Benny and June is in there. There's the old Blue Lagoon. But just so you know, when indoctrination or whatever happens, it kind of shows up in this world too. Not to say that it doesn't deserve a place, but it's there, you know. All right, to the top here of the Enneagram, fear of being controlled. Just exactly what we're saying. I mean, what is it here? Forbidden love, you know. Brokeback Mountain, of course. Fear of being controlled. I always got yelled at for saying that I'm being controlling, you know. However, what's the sin? Vengeance and lust. What was driving behind there? What was the I want to be free type of thing that was going? What's this? Forgiveness and chastity. This isn't an 8. It's an 8. Yeah. I forgot what the name of the 8 in Enneagram is, but anyway, for this story pattern, you have an incomplete hero, a counterpart, and a complication. So let's just take a rough cut on like any sort of love story. You have whatever character, usually they'll have a male lead. I guess it's even. You could have a female lead. She's incomplete. She meets this guy. He's the counterpart. And there's always a complication. There's always something that's keeping them apart. I've said over and over that my complication was potted kept us apart. It was marijuana just was the thing that was the complication in the relationship. Back here, this fear of being controlled. I don't think I was being controlling. I think the pot was being controlling. Anyway, onto this. Let's say feminist. I had a tough time with this because I was trying to figure out how do you have an incomplete, feminist. I thought, well, maybe she's a former feminist. Maybe this counterpart would be a traditional male, and maybe the complication would be power, which does tie into this fear of being controlled.
Complication is she likes right-wing guys.
Right? Yeah, right.
Or if you look at the transition from, because feminism came out of the Marxist movement. It was a rejection of men in the communist movement, and then they reformed as the feminist movement in the 60s, first wave feminists.
So Marxism was class, feminism was gender.
Right.
There's
and then
curtains.
Then second and third wave feminisms are almost like a continued disenfranchisement of women from the status quo. Like the first wave feminism were really they were seeking what everybody could agree with, which was dealing with the hypocrisy within liberal democracies, which was the actuality was that women weren't treated equally, which was true. But when you get into second wave and then you get into third wave, it was getting further and further from reality.
Right.
So I'm wondering if that it's not necessarily former feminists as much as progressive feminists or progressive feminism is a continuation towards further and further incompleteness.
Notice progressive. All right. Well, it's a hero, so I'll leave progressive feminist. To put a point on what you just said, I think Kurt had offered that instead of going for universal suffrage, you should have just made a house for women, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Which and what does that do? Because if you think of suffrage in the first place was about essentially skin in the game, property ownership.
Right.
And then that went to males based on the draft, which was if you're going to sacrifice your life for the country, then you should have a say in the country. And then it went to women. All three of those are separate weights and measures.
Right. Yeah.
Right? And that all got conflated into the House of Commons.
So there's a huge story that's possible there. Could be science fiction or rewriting history, but notice that there's a story there. Notice here you could have a social justice warrior. There's a counterpart and a complication. I got to a point where, kind of like you were saying, Bill, it kind of, they're all the same.
So in each of these, though, what is the counterpart? So if we talk about Antifa and counterpart, what are you looking at as the counterpart? So just the opposite. Antifa would be fascists.
Yeah, typically it would be, because that's what creates the best dramatics for like a movie. You want to have the absolute opposite because it makes for the most sparks in the relationship or the potential relationship, and you can have the most fun in the story. In reality, life doesn't necessarily show up that way. An Antifa can meet another Antifa, but there has to be a complication. There has to be, they could be almost a perfect match. That's another way to see it. Well, what if you totally met the absolute most awesome Antifa guy or whatever, and then they go, well, he's fucking horrible in bed, or he's lame, or I don't know. That's the complication, right? Like you can kind of have fun with it. See if I have any what is it? Yeah, even conspiracy theorist, counterpart, complication. Either I got lazy here or I just said I think it was I was having difficult finding the counterpart, and now realizing that you can have a counterpart that's kind of exactly like you and still have a complication, and you can have a counterpart opposite.
I'm wondering if the issue is that a lot of these ideologies is anybody that is not you is the counterpart, and then that ends up with this conflated category. So really, in a lot of these things, counterpart is just simply other, simply not group.
Well, I think you can also have somebody who is in the group and they're going to start dating, and they're also going to have a complication, and it's an equally worthy exploration to find out, well, what if you did have, quote, your perfect partner, then what? And see what kind of complications show up out of it.
Right.
Okay, just to circle back, this whole thing on extroversion, because we want to bring it back to endocrine system, right? And big five, enthusiasm, assertiveness, noticing this, we're great, road, team, and a prize, golden fleece. Obviously, we're having a lot of extroversion. We have events and the road and all of that. And in this dating dynamic, if it's like a rom-com, but it could also just be a buddy love tale, like 48 hours and some of these other ones, kind of so like
it's a high. So that's high vigor then.
Yeah, that's another way to say it. Good high vigor in here too.
Extroversion.
So, all right.
That's a whole other spectra to cover in this is civilizational traits versus vigor.
Well,
Yep.
you can also have high vigor to stay alive here too. In these horror films.
What was that, vigor? Sorry, I missed that sentence there.
Oh, I said you could have a high vigor in the monster in the house too to stay alive.
Yeah, it maps to all
well, no, actually, I would say that under high, if you look at gibbons and baboons, baboons are defending against predator pressures. So that's the other, where gibbons are competing in group for resources. So monster in the house would be in group competition. So I'm wondering if that metric, the idea of gibbons through baboons or civilizational traits through vigor, actually turns this from a spectra into a loop, where when you reach the benefits of high vigor, that's institutional narratives, if that then leads back around into monster in the house.
Oh, that's great, because institutionalized is also a 10, so it's 5 pairs. So this one is a 10. A 10 reduced comes down to a 1, which is like, it's another level of a monster in the house. It's like
right. So now we're talking about spirals, where the institutionalized tales then wrap back around as a new house and a new monster in the house, a new threat.
Right.
Cool.
So stage 5, life is great. It's about innocent wonderment, and I see that showing up in our conversations. I mean, we're just totally open and thinking about things. The tribe senses we're all on the same team with the same goal. We're playing for the greater good. They explore infinite potential and how to have a global impact and make history, in competition with what's possible rather than another tribe. So
Sheepdog, woof.
Yeah. Agreeableness is the endocrine big 5 here. Compassion, politeness. This is, I think, why we're trying to change our framing and our communication. That's why the still manning is coming up, is that we're going, hey, maybe we can get some more of this. We can become a gravitational force, or we could start driving this spiral from the front of the ship. Agreeableness, friendly and compassionate versus cold and unkind, or they'll call you arrogant and whatever. But a tendency to be compassionate and cooperative rather than suspicious and antagonistic towards others. What's interesting, though, is that it seems like this has been weaponized. The left tries to pretend that they are compassionate and cooperative to others and accepting and all of that. But is there a drive to be, super tolerant and seek power and, all the Marxist drivers that they have?
But if you look at the incentive that I can't remember what shift we were at there, where we shift from herd to pack. Right. One is so for instance, packs don't necessitate an enemy, but herds do. Herds necessitate a predator. Right. So there's the focus on the other as a threat. And is life's great being weaponized a mean of locking people into a herd basin? Does life sucks swing back around from is the rhetoric around life's great a way of clipping off a transition into the pack mentality? Are they clipping off the whole other side of the bell curve? Maybe
I think it might be it's trying to undermine rule of law, because you have the cooperation, so then you have the opportunity to free ride, and they don't want us to keep that high V and high C in equilibrium, so they try to taint the rhetoric around it to undermine rule of law.
But I would say that it's a level deeper than that. That it's not rule of law as much as being held accountable for competency. It's that shift from feeling insignificant into being incompetent. That's the shift of personal responsibility,
which takes away people's stable identity. Because if your identity is based on a deception, like an illusion of competence, then it's not stable.
Right, and that's because at that point, from the point of feeling insignificant towards competence, is the point at which you take control of your role within the greater group. That's the point at which personal agency becomes a factor, becomes the deciding factor, as opposed to just being present as camouflage versus being a role within the division of labor.
And
So,
what does your competence matter if you're a Marxist, gender intersectionality, whatever professor? How is that a productive? How is that productive?
well, but this is the incentives that we're operating under now, is where you have high openness to experience but low conscientiousness.
Right.
So there's not a whole lot of value on property that's been created because the openness to experience has the presupposition that, well, I can always just recreate it. So I don't need to preserve what's already created. I can just go out and do it again. On one hand, until there is an accountability from the greater group, which is you can't be destructive. So that's where we clip off the bell curve right in the middle. Right. So are all of these tactics really, they focus on clipping off life's great by the manufacturing of a necessary enemy.
Yeah, let's get into that because, okay, so the examples, I'm interested in people, I sympathize with others' feelings, I have a soft heart, I feel others' emotions, I make people feel at ease, I take time out for others, or I'm not really interested in others, I insult people. I am not interested in other people's problems, I feel little concern for others.
But let's add to that. I'm interested in people, sympathize with others, have a soft heart, and feel for others' emotions, make them feel at ease, and take time out for them on the condition that there is a threat that I can defend them from.
Right. Within limits.
Right. So what they're doing is they're plagiarizing or they're faking life's great. They're clipping off the whole right side of the bell curve by mimicking life's great on the condition of another. Yeah. Their whole narrative is based on the other, of the threat, of the predator.
So to make people submissive.
So it's a false, here's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
It's the sale of the false promise of life's great.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. This is a great conversation tonight.
Yeah. We got to give the real 5 then at some point. We got to create, like, here's that fake slaughterhouse life is great. Here's the, like, this is the one that's the loop, will keep you in a loop, and then here's the one you'll break free.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's hit this story pattern. Full triumphant. It has a full, an establishment, and a transmutation. Of the Enneagram, the fear of being separated. What are we talking about with peaceful separation, the national divorce, the great divorce, the big divorce, all of that, right? What's holding it back? Is this fear of being separated? Of the sin is this indolence and sloth. And obviously what we're doing is to encourage people, build your competency, build your agency, get on it. It's everything to redirect from not doing this, which is the virtue of remembrance and diligence. Remember your capabilities, or what you're here to do is a big part. There's a big thing of, like, knowing who you are starts to show up, because most fools, like, there's such an innocent expression of their true selves. And usually the establishment is filled with pretense and fake humans, like you're saying, like fake goals, fake humans and stuff. So full triumphant tales I love. Right at the top, look at this political fool. It's been a popular category for a while, but there hasn't been a new political fool in a long time. This is I think body switch fool, where they change. Here's a society fool posters. This is a sex fool. Is it? No, fool out of water. Sorry. And then this one's sex fool. Whoops, where'd it go? Okay, let's pick some white male. The fool is just a white male, and you can see from memes they try to make a huge fun of white males. The establishment I have as just a parasitic oligarchy, and the transmutation would be to punish parasitism. Antifas are fools in their own ways. The establishment is filled with fascists, and the transmutation would end oppression. And I think that end oppression thing just took off for a while. Neo-reactionaries, the establishment is a failing democracy, and the transmutation would be back to manoralism. We have nationalists, failing democracy, America 2.0. Any conspiracy theorists who really broke out, like in a political fool, would be they're the fools, but they have a network of conspiracies they're up against, and the transmutation would be the end of conspiracies.
Okay, well, if anything, this just proves that we're all operating at the right end of the bell curve,
Right?
because it's where all our conversations happen, right? You know what might be helpful is that this three-dimensional spectrum, like former feminist, PC culture, accepting normies, these three dimensions. If we have a fourth and a fifth, the fourth being the misconception, the fifth being the correction.
Yeah.
And then we could work backwards from life's great backwards through all of these storylines as a argumentation algorithm, like a diagnostic pathway.
That's so good, because a lot of stories are about that, especially the ending. You know, they make this big plan, they storm the castle, the princess has been moved. It's always the misdirection, the first effort to try to, they think they're going to solve it, and then they have to dig deep down again, and they come up with another plan, and they go for it again. Usually they do that 2 or 3 times. So yeah, a misdirection and the correction would be really good. All right, you guys ready for the last one? Got an itchy nose.
Hell yeah.
All right. Yep. Good. Okay, institutionalized tales. 3 elements: a group, a choice, and a sacrifice. So in this, typically you have a newbie, like maybe a new sheepdog, new to proprietarian. So the group, it would be like a proprietarian group. There's a choice that's made, and typically the choice is either to go head full in kind of thing, join the group, or to go against the group. Like there's a question behind there of who's crazier, me or them. We certainly have examples of people who have been booted from it, that have gone against, and we've had people that have gone in really well. And you got to find out, the other part is, what is the sacrifice? A large part of the movie is, what is the sacrifice that they did? And Bill, as you had intuited, a 10 circles back around to a 1. It's again fear of being evil. The line of who's crazier, me or them, is also very similar to who's evil, me or them. We have again resentment and anger coming up as the sin, and peace and patience. Both of these, of course, should have limits. For feminists, that would be the group. So this would be an example. If you were to do this story, you would have, and if it was a progressive feminist, you'd have a young college student joins the local feminist movement or whatever. She figures out that the choice is, does she want to undermine and destroy culture? Oh, does she want to undermine institutions? And then the sacrifice is that it's going to destroy culture and commons, particularly normative culture and commons. Traditional women, the group of joining traditional women, the choice of mobilizing, and the sacrifice is that some of them would likely get doxxed. That could turn into something. Social justice warriors, a choice to empower the oppressed. And then look, I have it here. The sacrifice, they're sacrificing proportionality, reciprocity, and meritocracy. That's what they'd sacrifice. Of the film types here, this top one is going to be military institutions. This one is family institutions. Family institutions. This is business institutions. One of my favorite is office space right here. This is mentor institutions. Training day. It's training day, Officer Hoyt. That's a good one. Definitely, that's so good on the group, the choice, the sacrifice. He gets involved with like the drug enforcement police, finds out all the cops are bad and crooked. He has to make a choice. Like, is he going to go crooked with them? And the sacrifice, of course, is, his life is on the line for a large part of it. And the sacrifice of going against these bad cops to get them all, either dead or thrown, arrested and prosecuted. The last one is, yeah, go ahead.
Can I add in that it seems like this is the feedback failure that results in civilizational cycles, is that this appears to be the point at which the conflict that arises in the storyline is really the feedback loop of adaptivity within the society, where one is either acting as the immune system to lance out the failure of the greater commons, and is successful. And with that means an alteration of the commons, which there's some sacrifice, there's some letting go, or it's an autoimmune that ends up destroying the body itself. This narrative seems to be like the narrative that what humanity has been seeking a solution for.
Mm-hmm.
So then it goes back to, do you have a rule of law established where you can put limits on all the different personality constellations so that they can operate together?
Right. So one of the things that I've been meaning to write today was my issues with fascism, because Richard Heath and I have a huge respect for it, but we always butt heads on this, and I think that he thinks I'm too modernist. And my argument isn't that fascism is false. It's that fascism doesn't allow enough latitude for societal adaptability. So fascism works for a social norm that is already adaptive, that already has a built-in mechanism for adaptability. So we're looking right now, this is a failure of adaptability, that if adaptability fails, then we cycle right back to the beginning of this lecture. Mm-hmm. This is the solution that we're looking for, is that the Anglo model, being iterative and nonlinear, has seemed to address some of these issues, but then explicitly expresses it as though it's a simple linear model, which it's not. It's an adaptive, nonlinear model. It's complexity. And that what Richard's talking about with fascism solves a lot of the problems, but then sacrifices adaptability. And so right here, we're so XY, the XY column is really, we're talking about the necessity of adaptability. And if it fails, we go right back to the beginning again.
Right. Well, I like to add that why are institutionalized tales at this Life is Great column, when many of these tales, like military institution and family, like a lot of these are pretty disheartening tales. Like these aren't particularly Life is Great institutions that we're looking at. And my counterpoint to that is, it's just because we don't have them yet. We can have awesome institutions, and we've had them before. Maybe we could start doing institutionalized tales when we had some good institutions that were going. We're looking at things that are dysgenic and have not been working. So as you're talking about this biofeedback loop, or maybe here at this full establishment and transmutation, we've had a false goals that we were pushing forward, and we haven't made corrections to those. So the fools that have pushed us forward, or the establishment just kind of ate up the fool and did a fake change and said, oh yeah, sure, we'll incorporate that, and they co-opt the movement instead. Like some of the
well, I find it amusing. So with one of the guys that I mentor, we were talking about
the progression to where we are right now and the benefits. And I was saying that most of it was based on foolishness. It was completely accidental. I think that, was it franchise? I can't remember which legal change in common law, which nobody that had power, nobody in Parliament would wish for this, actually got voted through, because one of the checkers, one of the people that counts the votes, was a bit of a tea tipper. He was a drinker. And one of the parliamentarians stepped up to cast his vote, and the guy was a very large fat man. So the tea checker jokingly said 10. He counted him as 10 votes because he was a large fellow. And the vote went through by 3.
Oh, geez.
I can't remember. This is a critical foundation for common law today that went through on really just a foolish act, and that common law and the Anglo Enlightenment has really been a bumbling and stumbling, non-intentional series of follies towards a system that worked. And it resulted from that by a whole bunch of men that were violent. So there was no central authority. So there was no central planning on an island without a lot of external threat. It was completely accidental. So we're going from fool establishment transmutation towards institutional tales. And I'm starting to wonder if maybe back to its phenotypes, and that our intuitions are really drives of genes, is do we have an instinct that life is great under the right institution, and that we fumble our way towards there without this contrived sort of central discretionary planned path towards it. That like life is great right here sounds a hell of a lot like Darwinian evolution.
This last one here I wanted to point out. This is issue institution. So I think there's like Crash, Babel, Friends with Money, Nashville, The Big Chill. These tend to be ensemble cast films, and typically they explore an issue, and they're doing the same thing. There's a group, a choice, a sacrifice inside of here, and we could these would be really easy if we wanted to produce a documentary, or we want to have many voices on an issue. If we wanted to do it within the Life is Great, I feel pretty happy to share that idea of bumbling towards establishments that work. I think is a great way than the braggadocious side of we're Western civilization, we figure this out forever, kind of thing. We're the best. So it's kind of cool to think of it from another way, that we just kind of goofed up and we got lucky. That would certainly take the egoic chip off of some people. So that's about what I got here.
I think this is great, and in terms of a calm strategy, this is definitely something that anything that we put out, whether that's like the 2 projects that I'm working on, that we should run through these. Are the narratives that we're putting together fit the middle of the bell curve, or the left spectrum, the right spectrum, and are we following it? Are we following it logically?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's good strength in getting where people could be at, and then pulling them a little forward. There's so much power in this fear too. Like, just see how this fear of being separated shows up, and that I think is where a big hook. Notice how in this Civil War 2.0 discussion or Wexit that we're talking about right now, this is a big deal. If you wanted to run Wexit through these, you're going to have at least 5 different cybernetic basins and calm cycles that you could be doing. You know, people that this fear of separation could be high from a place where they want to be agreeable, but agreeable has not been working. You know, it could be that false goal that's going to just get into this bad institution kind of thing.
Well, you know, I see it all over from on one hand, I think a lot of Wexiteers, it's a fear of insignificance. And then the pushback from them is a fear of being separated from the greater Canada. And then within that, there's a weaponized backlash, calling them, you know, bigots and racists. So it's a fear of being evil. All of these things are at play within that dynamic. And I thought the greater opportunity was the PPC, but now that I've been listening more to the leaders in the Wexit, they're primed for the stuff that we're talking about, and we're almost 2 steps too late, because they're already looking at policies and they're already looking at constitutions. Like, we really need to get in there and get some rhetoric in there, because they're inevitably going to repeat the same mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
They're only looking at economic issues. They're only looking at local and myopic timeline issues, as opposed to expanding that out and talking about greater systematic changes that are contrary to intuition until intuition is reinformed.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I have been working all weekend, but I've also been beating myself up about being 2 years late to this. That I saw this coming and I ignored it, and I really need help. I need people to research, I need people to write arguments, and I need copywriters to pull it together. But we can do it if we get a team together.
Yeah, let's do it.
We can. So that's denying access to Alain because he's not allowed, and a call to Lucas and Spencer and anybody else that is willing to lend a hand. So yeah, subtle hint. Sorry.
I want to help collapse the federal government. Come on.
I know you do, but you're destined for greater things, my son.
Oh, thank you.
All right, we have anything else to cover on this, or the file size I fear is going to get a little large. I was thinking to turn this one off.
No, I think we should, but I do think that because we're sort of on the right hand side of the spectrum, that we need to reiterate that that really what all of this speaks to is human development towards thinking in terms of narratives, that our intuitions and our heuristic self-defenses, in terms of how we experience them, are narratives. There is something to this. There are patterns here that we can draw from. If these themes are as long as recorded history, there's a reason for that. And that reason for that is because we have developed a heuristic based on narratives, because that is the most efficient way for immediate self-defense. So don't just dismiss this or wave hand against it. This is there is a foundation behind this.
Cool.
Well, yeah, it's like you got to have the heuristics, and then the details are available when it's appropriate to dig in deeper.
Right, and the one thing that P provides is the depth of detail and resources if needed, but that doesn't replace a need for a heuristic.
Right.
Right, and what we're speaking to directly right now is the heuristics in which people operate from, the knee-jerk reactions. Right, not everybody is autistic. Not everybody is going to be reasonable, or not every conversation is going to be accessible by reason and rationale. So we can't ignore the heuristics. We can't ignore the intuitions. And narratives is how we operate when we're not paying direct discursive attention.
So this isn't something to ignore.
It's definitely necessary. Any concluding statements?
Just a reminder, I've worked on this since 2008. I think it was the collapse of the real estate market back in that last boom. And then I just, I really got into it. I took a bunch of my personal development, 10, 15 years of that, 5+ years of film theory. And I created these layers and I put stuff on top of things, kind of layering these spectra. And then sometimes they'd sit there for a little while, and I have old versions where I took things off and things that components just wouldn't fit. They wouldn't fit well. And then I met Bill, and there was the time with Jan Irvin and the whole thing on trivium. And I felt that I went from this subjective, because I was, myth matrix, I had this dialed in, the subjective side, but I was really blind to the objective truth side. And then luckily snapped out of that and got into really good proprietarian arguments, and then Sheepdog, and centering on the family, the moral middle, and application of proprietarianism. So it's been great to participate in this. And I'm glad that I didn't release a lot of my work too early, because I feel that I've got objective and subjective together now in a nice harmony. I love bringing it in the endocrine systems and our psychology and how we're wired. This Enneagram has fit really well for a while. I think that's been really interesting to understand that there used to be 9 sins, and now that there's 7. It was a big breakthrough that, what was it? Deceit, vanity and deceit, number 3. And then number 9, what is it? 3, 6, and 9. 6 was where is it here? Doubt and fear. Oh yeah, so you have fear and lies basically, and then I just see how the parasitic oligarchy operates. Push the fear narrative and just lie through their teeth at all the time. And that you take those out of the sins, so you don't have Catholics and Christians able to point their finger and go, hey, wait, pushing fear on people is a sin and lying is a sin. Like, that just isn't there anymore. The one that's left around is 9, sloth. So you can certainly whip people and tell them you're being slothful, but are they just not doing busy work, or are they really living their life purpose, kind of thing? That's why it shows up here in this full triumphant, is that your indolence and sloth, or remembrance and diligence, is about who you really are. And often for people in this stage, it's going to be they're going against a full-on establishment. So there's a lot of truth to be in this stage.
I wonder if there's an overlap with time horizons here, time preference, indolence and sloth, remembrance and, I can't see it now, remembrance and
diligence.
And diligence. That this is a longer time horizon priority, and if you fail in accepting that responsibility, it's dismissiveness and inaction and sloth.
Yeah,
I wonder if they saw us coming.
I like the idea of adding that, seeing if that spectra will overlay. I like the high V, high C. I'd like to understand how that might. I'm definitely open to. And just remember, you try to layer it over and see if it stays there, or we look at it and go, I don't know. And then I would find that it would just naturally fall away if it wasn't meant to fit, and if the gears wouldn't go together, whatever piece would just pop back out. So we could also add some more political identities here. This was just mostly from our original list, Bill, but you could put Wexits on here. You could throw a new column and put on Wexits and take them all the way through. It could be a great exercise. I like the idea of adding.
That's true. One of the
2 additional ones here too.
Yeah, that's a great idea, because I can see at least 4 at play right now, just in the little bit of research I did this afternoon around these narratives, which means that there's a potential decohesion, and within the other 3 seem to be
rebuttals against Brexit. Now, quite honestly, I think Brexit is the wrong party. I think the Wild Rose was the way forward, but Wild Rose has dissolved. So the end game right now is to use this landscape to introduce terms like proportional reciprocity somewhere, so that we can cite it everywhere, right? So this is it's by no means a small task, and something like these narratives help to inform that.
That's how that's the way I think you made a great point. It's been working for history. I think if even stories speed up, the ending tends to be more intense, faster, more at stake type of thing. Think about the amount of media that our children are being able to take in, how many thousands of stories. I've probably seen more than 50% of the films that are in these little mini thumbnails in here. And that's just through my life thus far. So not only is it the stories so back then they read books, and then they'd know some stories, or they'd make up stories, and which is an important part too. But the important, what I think is important here is that so many of these popular Western films have a worldwide audience. Like, for example, in 2011, I went to Brazil and I got to go to Carnival. And in Carnival that year, they happened to have all of the floats were popular American films. So like they had a Jaws one, they had an Indiana Jones. They didn't do a Star Wars one. Of course, they did the drag queen bus something, and they did something else. But there was a deep understanding of films. Like they can go across cultures and people and languages. So I think that points even more towards the power of narratives, and that we can have quick access to. That's what I think is particularly powerful about this, because if you take any one of these political identities, you take any cybernetic basin, kind of find out about where you're at, you can quickly make a story, and you can inform it with probably about 10 or 15 films that are there to be seen. And from there you can go, oh, well, it's going to be a little bit of this and that. And okay. And so this is the new idea. So just from having a template of 10, 15 movies in the basin that you want, with the political identity that you want, you can come up with at least one narrative that could win.
Well, and a couple of years back, they found the earliest known piece of music that was written, and the theme of the song was "You Only Live Once," which is a theme that we have right now. And then you look at, if you get into information systems and information science, and how we compress information, and the fact that crow brains, that we can only hold 5 plus or minus 2 things in our mind at one time, which means, we can look at the side of a Starbucks cup and say, out of the 5 options that we can check off with the person's misspelled name, it's going to be 5 plus or minus 2 before somebody makes a mistake in making that coffee.
Right.
So all of these are, and Todd will relate to this, these are all principles that go into UX development. You as soon as you reach the 7th option within a menu, you need to break your menu out into 2 menus, because the human brain can't compile that. Well, what we're talking about is taking a set of things and combining them into one thing, so that we can consider those 3 or 5 options as one thing compared to the other 3 or 5 things, so that we can iteratively or recursively consider 10 things as 2 things, and then do 2 passes through to make a decision. It's information compression is what we're talking about. So when we're talking about narratives here, we're talking about taking a hugely multivariant experience, and breaking it down into chunkable sizes that we can comprehend quickly. This is why I say it's intuition and heuristics, is that we can take the entire geopolitical landscape plus our domestic politics plus the culture wars that are going on and fit that into a narrative that really comes down to 3 or 5 different vectors that allow us to assess it within 20 minutes rather than 10 months of research. Right? So if we reverse that process and say, okay, these are the intuitions that people are operating from, can we open up a discourse based on the intuition and then move into the rational and discourse? Can we go from the 20-minute discussion into the 10-month education? We're reversing the process. So this is hugely valuable. This is the weaponization of this is marketing, is spin doctoring, is public relations. Well, that's not inherently morally bad. Can we reverse that and say, okay, identify the narrative that a person is speaking from, and then open up the conversation into something that is more testimonially consistent? Can we bring them towards testimonialism and operationalism and say, I see where you are with that narrative. I see the incentives that you're operating from, right? That's our 2 latter criteria in testimonialism. Now let's talk about, is that possible? So now we're moving into existential possibility. Is that empirical? And then move in, is that logically consistent, and so on. So we're moving upstream. We're swimming upstream in our testimonial criteria to get them to a place of truth.
Yeah.
Right. And at that point, when you bring in all of those vectors, they're no longer interpreting reality, but recognizing it. And this was the breakthrough for me on testimonialism. Is there's a difference between analyzing and coming to a conclusion. There's a difference between having a set of data and interpreting it by a formula, and then there's a difference between having an ability to recognize by dimensions of existence. You recognize something. So you teach a kid language and you say some words refer to objects, some words refer to actions, some words describe objects, some words describe actions, nouns, verbs, adverbs, adjectives. When you do it that way, they recognize a noun. They don't understand a noun or interpret a noun. They recognize a noun. They might forget it's called a noun, but they recognize words that refer to an object are a noun. Words that refer to actions are verbs. It's a recognition, not an interpretation. And I think that testimonialism, by adding in these dimensions, pushes people towards, or more specifically operationalism, pushes people towards a fundamental criteria of informing their view of the world by a recognition of reality or existential possibility, as opposed to informing their reality by interpretation by an ideology. This is why I say proprietarianism is a methodology versus an ideology. They seem very similar because they're process driven. One is an interpretation. One is a methodology that leads to recognition, where you can actually see it. You don't have to think about it anymore. You've come to the disambiguation. It's now distinct. When you come across it in the world, it's right there. It's right there. It takes no effort to recognize it. It takes a lot of effort or continuous effort to continually interpret it. Right? So people on the left and the neuroticism and the anxiety and the higher metabolism and the higher rates of baseline stress fit with an interpretive framework, because it takes a hell of a lot of effort. This is what I learned from the meditative practice. It takes a hell of a lot of effort to constantly maintain that interpretation. So if you'll break out of one framing of reality, one insight, say one meditative insight, and you have this whole new insight that now informs everything in the world. And then you spend all your time finding it. It's right there. And there it is again. It's, it's sort of like, I want to buy a blue canyon. So all of a sudden you notice blue canyons everywhere you go. There's a blue canyon. There's another blue canyon. It's this, that the mind is running at a higher rate to constantly seek that search, to find results for that search, which fits with a higher metabolic rate, a higher stress level, a higher baseline stress level, versus a recognition where you go, oh, there it is, and then boom, the stress level returns to normal immediately. So propertarianism and recognition is that you see it, you identify it immediately. There's no need for an effort or some sort of interpretive filter to be running to recognize it. It's just simply recognizing it drops away, as opposed to an interpretation which has to be constantly asserted, like a false identity, like a false personality, where you have to constantly work at it. It's a preoccupation. So neurotic people tend to be neurotic, higher anxiety, higher activity, because they are having to work at projecting a certain persona. Right. So anyway, and I think these narratives follow that suit. I think the gibbon baboon metaphor follows that. I think the RK follows that. There's overlap here, and we can speak into the surface level operations first by talking about narratives, and then driving deeper back towards this recognition.
And in that recognition, we were talking about operationalism, testimonialism, and remember, you get to the place where you're going to warrant your speech, that it is fully accounted for, that you could provide restitution if you're wrong. I do want people to be able to get to there.
And that was really the shift from feeling insignificant to feeling incompetent.
Yeah.
Right. And so we have this hard barrier between these two things, where now if you're going to speak or act, you have to warrant your actions.
Yeah.
That's a matter of personal responsibility. And then that's a fear of being incompetent versus a fear of being insignificant. So I think we've identified a main incentive between deception and action. It's right in the middle of the bell curve.
Good stuff. Well, let's leave people in the middle of the bell curve.
Thank you, Bryan, for this. It's fantastic. It was a great conversation today.
Thank you. All right, everybody. Signing off.
Take care.
Bye. Thank you.